To your point, they want access to, and by the way, Jensen Huang wants them to have access to NVIDIA chips of some kind.
Paris. Yeah, well, he does, because he doesn't have, he just wants to give them the Biden chip, the H20,
which they were, and then they weren't.
Right.
And they took what was originally $5.5. They did roll that back. I think it ended up being in the quarter $4.5 billion write
but
down.
But still, they say there's $50 billion in play.
With the overall market.
Yeah, overall.
That's not like they're going to sell 50 billion NVIDIA chips into China.
No, but they're saying that we had 95% of the market a few years ago.
I know, but they don't need more. But when you use that $50 billion number, it makes people think, oh, it's a $50 billion loss. It's not of revenues.
No, you see, I was quoting Jensen, who said it was 50 billion. I mean,
it's a $50 billion market.
Right. Well, in play is the same as market.
Opportunity.
Okay, let's agree with opportunities.
What was a terrible trade for a while has turned into a great one, and that's the semis. The SMH ETF is up 44% off the April low. Some of the components within there, it's just astounding the gains that we've seen. Microchip, a double. Micron, 74. onsemi, 70. And on and on. The SMH is up 5 of the last 6 days. Christina Partsenevelos follows this so closely. She joins us now with more on why these stocks are moving yet again.
Yeah, they're staging a comeback with, just to add more stats for the SMH, the ETF heading for its third straight weekly gain, driven by specifically strong earnings and shifting policy wins. So the biggest catalyst today is a White House official signaled President Trump could ease chip export restrictions to China in exchange for faster rare earth exports. So a rocks for chips deal that could help names like AMD and NVIDIA. NVIDIA's dominance got another boost when Huawei's CEO admitted their chips still lag U.S. peers by a full generation. This according to Chinese state media just over the last 24 hours. NVIDIA's CFO reinforced this edge just last week at GTC Paris, citing margin recovery and improving Blackwell supply. And that's why you're seeing shares up 22.5% just in the last month. And the momentum's spreading. Micron jumped 3% today after announcing they're shipping HBM, or high bandwidth memory, HBM4, 36 gigabyte samples to key customers, while TSMC gained about 2% on a 40% year over year May sales spike. TSMC now on its longest winning streak since December 2023. That's 7 straight days in a row. And then here's the key metric, Scott, to your conversation. SMH has really climbed 16% this past month versus just 6% for IGV, which represents software, and 6.5% for the SPY ETF as well, which really signals a performance gap and a clear rotation back into hardware as AI infrastructure builds and those geopolitical risk ease. Scott?
Christina, thank you. Christina Partsenevelos. Let's not kid ourselves either. You go back to NVIDIA's earnings day, which was so highly anticipated, and you needed that to go well for this trade to continue to work. It did, in fact, and that in many respects is why we find ourselves here today as well. Brenda, you own that stock along with Broadcom.
We do, and what we've seen, obviously, when NVIDIA reported, the market was in a much different place. But now we have, and when Broadcom reported recently, they reported a perfectly fine quarter, gave strong guidance. AI is really continuing to drive that story. Even the non-AI semiconductors stabilized a little bit more than I think everybody had expected. But the stock had a bit of a ho-hum reaction. So I think it's just telling that this group has come a long way fast, and the expectations are pretty high. Still believe that it's an important exposure to have in a portfolio, absolutely, and that there will continue to be ongoing demand as AI infrastructure spend continues. That both of those names will be very relevant and important, but have to be mindful a little bit of how far we've come, and that expectations just ratchet up as they get more expensive.
Malcolm, they may have come really far, really fast, but B of A, for example, and I'm assuming many others are still bullish on the space. They put out a note today because of demand trends, data center and AI levered companies like the NVIDIAs of the world, the Broadcoms, the AMDs, and the Marvell. You own in the very least of that group, NVIDIA too.
And Brenda pointed out the fact that they've come so far so fast. I think it's really important to point out the fact that they're really pegged to, I would say, Broadcom and NVIDIA. Whatever direction NVIDIA goes, we saw NVIDIA's earnings basically touting the demand that still is there and their ability to ramp up production to meet Blackwell demand. Now we're hearing that they have to actually increase production even more to meet that demand, and that's a very positive signal for the entire sector. So I think it's still that same trade. As NVIDIA goes, so goes the rest of the semis trade. So I think investors should just be very cautious to pay attention to how fast this trade has run, and be concerned a little bit about how much further it can go instead of maybe considering the fact that this is going to continue to run at this pace throughout the rest of the year.
What were you buying then, and what would you do now?
Well, I tell you what, I was buying companies like Apple. I was buying companies like Palantir, NVIDIA in particular, anything that got hit really hard and where sentiment was overwhelmingly negative. And the reason I was doing that was because I had known my history. When the emotions run high, people do the right thing at exactly the wrong time. They sell when it gets low, they buy when it gets high. So you flip that around, you get to work. Today, I'm going to stick to that playbook. We're cresting towards new highs. Some of the best companies are still on the leaderboard.
Yeah, well, the NVIDIA trade, for instance, looks genius, but the Apple one, we're wait and see, I guess. Yeah.
Well, as broader averages rally, chip stocks going particularly strong. The top 3 stocks in the S&P so far in June are all chip names. Christina Partsinevelos joining us now for more on the semiconductor surge. Christina.
Yeah, chips really staging a comeback. The SMH ETF, which we often use as a good barometer, up about 45% from its April low, also posting its best 43-day period for the fund since 2002. There are some catalysts. You talked about it. President Trump could ease some export restrictions to China in exchange for faster rare earth exports. Some are assuming semiconductors would be part of that conversation. NVIDIA's dominance, though, got another boost also today when Huawei's CEO admitted their chips still lag U.S. peers by a full generation behind. And this is according to Chinese state media. NVIDIA's CFO reinforced this edge just last week in Paris, citing margin recovery and improving Blackwell supply. And so that's why you're really seeing shares up 23% in just the last month. A real change in course for the company. And the momentum is spreading. Micron shares, they jumped about 3% today on new HBM high bandwidth memory sample shipments, while TSMC gained about 3% on a 40% year-over-year May sales spike, which is just a little bit ahead of trend. TSMC is now on its longest winning streak since December 2023, 8 straight days of winning.
It just sort of seems like an across the board, maybe even some catch up there with people perhaps getting less pessimistic about the outlook for this industry that sources quite a bit from Asia. I wonder how much the semiconductor industry, as you've seen it lately, is hinging on the geopolitics and the policy moves.
I think the assumption from most streets or sales side guys is that most of the China restrictions are already priced into the stock. What you're seeing from that momentum is just recent commentary from the earnings call or the Bank of America tech event just last week. They had a conference and you had AMD CFO speak. You had onsemi's CEO speak on Tuesday saying that things are really improving within the auto sector. So you're starting to see this cyclical nature of chips, which normally, downturn for auto for quite a while, is starting to uptick a little bit. And so that spread and that desire to hold chips is coming back into people's portfolio, especially as the AI theme is still so relevant. So we're really seeing some positive commentary that move beyond just the China risk.
Yeah, the rare earths would be upside too, loosening up overall supply chain. Christina, thanks.
Let's get more on this run in chips and bring in Patrick Moorhead of Moorhead Insights and Strategy. Patrick, thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Thank you.
What do you make of the chip run?
A lot of people say it's too hot, but I just think it's just beginning here. I mean, the only place that we've seen heat is in hyperscaler data centers. We haven't even touched the enterprise data center, the enterprise edge, and we've seen no impact at the device level, not even including robotics. So I think we're at the beginning of a massive 5-year run here, and this is just the beginning.
It's Karen. Thanks for being on. So we talked a little bit a week or two ago about enterprise is really not even on the sort of the landscape, or people don't focus on it. It could potentially be bigger than hyperscalers, possibly, or a very significant chunk. How big do you think that could be?
It's $1 trillion opportunity. And what's happening is enterprises are a little slower getting adoption because they have technical debt that they have to figure out. They need to get their data planes figured out. They need to figure out how to run AI inside of their data centers. We believe that this will start to hit big in the second half of 26. I don't think we need to get ahead of ourselves here, but you're gonna see companies like HPE, companies like HP PC companies, and even those who operate on the edge, let's say who are building out new types of manufacturing facilities, new types of distribution facilities. Although I don't agree with everything NVIDIA says or they bring out, I do believe that the enterprise and the enterprise edge are the next waves that will hit. I don't think we're going to see this massive slowdown in hyperscalers either. This is the biggest opportunity since the internet, which I was part of, working for a tech company. We saw the bust, but I don't think it's going to happen here because of the pilots and the new applications that are scaling currently.
Today, Reuters is reporting that OpenAI is tapping Google for more compute capacity in a surprising partnership between the two AI rivals. If this story is correct, then it is yet another indication that AI demand, and therefore demand for NVIDIA's products, is hitting record levels right now. We also got confirmation today that NVIDIA and HPE will build a new supercomputer for Germany's Leibniz Supercomputing Center using NVIDIA's Vera Rubin. Vera Rubin is NVIDIA's next-generation platform after Blackwell. In other news, TSMC released their May revenue report today. Remember that TSMC manufactures NVIDIA's chips. The May revenue report showed revenue up 39.6% year over year, but down 8.3% month over month. This is because April was such a massive month for TSMC. Remember that back in April, TSMC saw revenue grow a massive 22.2% month over month. And so it's reasonable that there would be a little bit of a short-term pullback in the month over month growth rate, given how massive April's revenue growth was. Still, 39.6% year over year growth is solid, and the overall trend of AI demand is clearly moving higher. TSMC having negative month over month growth is nothing to be concerned about, as it happens quite often and is a normal occurrence. The important thing to notice is that the overall trend of TSMC's revenue growth is moving solidly higher as AI demand is increasing. This is the week of sovereign AI announcements out of Europe, with NVIDIA's GTC Paris happening this week. Jensen Huang is scheduled to deliver a keynote this Wednesday morning in Paris starting at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time. That's 5 a.m. Eastern, 2 a.m. Pacific. Jensen told us on NVIDIA's earnings call that he will speak about quantum GPU computing during that keynote. After Jensen's keynote, we have an important financial analyst Q&A scheduled to begin at 7:45 a.m. Eastern, 4:45 a.m. Pacific. Remember that NVIDIA will not be in a quiet period during this Q&A session, and so they should be able to speak in detail about many important topics. With this in mind, I'm expecting the financial analyst Q&A to have an important impact on NVIDIA's price action tomorrow. Over the past couple weeks, I've said repeatedly to pay attention to U.S.-China trade negotiations because it is possible that we could get a reversal of the H-20 export restriction to China. If that happens in the days ahead, I would expect NVIDIA stock to trade meaningfully higher very quickly on such an announcement. NVIDIA guided for Q2 revenue of $45 billion, but they would have guided for an additional $8 billion in quarterly revenue if there were no restriction on H-20 sales to China. And so, if that export control is lifted as part of U.S.-China trade negotiations in the coming days, then that would provide NVIDIA with many billions of dollars in additional revenue that analysts are currently not factoring into their estimates. So be on the lookout for any news in the days ahead. It's no secret that I'm bullish on the long-term future of NVIDIA, as I've said this many times over the past year. But in all honesty, there are so many positives going for this company right now, and I seriously think NVIDIA has a lot of runway ahead of it. NVIDIA maintains their competitive moat across both hardware and software. NVLink Fusion actually strengthens NVIDIA's competitive moat because now clients are even more likely to remain within NVIDIA's ecosystem. Blackwell has ramped extremely fast, representing 70% of NVIDIA's data center revenue in Q1. Blackwell Ultra should launch around the end of this quarter, and Blackwell Ultra is simply an upgrade of the chips within the Blackwell system. It's not a complete system upgrade like Blackwell was. This means we are less likely to see delays in Blackwell Ultra's rollout like what we experienced with Blackwell. After Blackwell has ramped, we should see margins move back up to the mid 70% range late this fiscal year. NVIDIA is still delivering performance upgrades that are so substantial that their customers have no choice but to continue purchasing NVIDIA's latest products in large quantities. And we keep hearing time and time again from the hyperscalers, as well as other companies like OpenAI, xAI Perplexity, and others, that they are all seeing record-setting levels of AI demand right now. I'm completely serious when I say that I think NVIDIA has a lot of runway ahead of it, and I genuinely think this company will be worth substantially more in the future than it is today. At least that's my view of the situation. Remember to stay calm in this market. Remember to maintain a long-term perspective, and do not make any hasty or irrational decisions. With all of that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of the day, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts about NVIDIA in the comments below. Please leave a like on this video so more people will see it. And while you're down there, please consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Thanks for watching, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.